Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Conversate in 8. Our guests today are Michelle Palmer and Diana Martinez Alexander. Thank you so much for joining us. Could y'all just take a moment and tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're running for, and why you're running?
Okay, Michelle, I'll go first. I'm Diana Martinez Alexander, and I'm running for Congress in the newly created District 38. And I'm a longtime educator, over 20 years, and got started in activism and organizing beyond my professional capacity after the election in 2016, when I realized that I needed to get more involved and get activated to really make change in our community. And I did not expect this run, but I realized that we have an opportunity in Congressional District 38 to really make a difference and fight for a seat because our margins are so slim in Congress. So I decided to go ahead and step up and run because I am going to give the Republicans a fight.
Awesome. Awesome.
And my name is Michelle Palmer, and I also am an educator. I've been a teacher for over a decade. And I am running for the State Board of Education, District 6, which is parts of Harris and Montgomery County. A lot of overlap with both 38 and 8. And I've been a public education advocate for over a decade. And much like Diana, got energized on a different level after the 2016 election. That's when she and I met. And I am running for State Board of Education because people don't understand how important this position is. The State Board of Education is an unpaid position. There are only 15 in a massive state of Texas. So each one covers about 2 million voters, or 2 million people, I should say. And they are in charge of what we teach, what the students of Texas are supposed to learn. And there are a lot of inaccuracies in our curriculum. I'm a history teacher. Even before all of the legislation that has been getting bandied about in the last year or so. In 2018, I made the decision to run for this race. In 2020, ran, almost won, scared them, so they gerrymandered it to make it a little more difficult for me. But I am going to fight for every single vote that I can get, and hopefully flip this district away from a person who does not care that our students are learning non-factual information.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you both so much for running as a candidate myself. I know how difficult it is and the sacrifice that's involved in running as a candidate. So thank you. So there's been a lot going on in Texas public education, Texas schools as of late. Things have gotten pretty intense. And it seems like the critical race theory issue gave birth to parents wanting to control curriculum, and even with the banning of the books that's been going on. Democrats lost seats in the last school board election because of a lot of the misinformation that's going around and parents getting pretty upset about these things. So can both of you share some of your observations about what's happening in public schools right now?
Sure. Do you want to?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll go first. Diana and I teach in very different districts. I teach in a district that has a mask mandate, that, you know, the vast majority of my students are vaccinated. My school board is pretty progressive. And so it's a very different experience to the one that Diana's probably going to explain, that because of the district she is working in. It is different to teach in a district like mine compared to some of the other districts in the area. When I was in the classroom, I'm not in the classroom this year because I'm in grad school running for office, and thought maybe a little time out of the classroom would be a good idea. So I'm the testing coordinator this year, which is also a lot, but a different lot. When I was in the classroom in my current district and my previous district, I'm previously in HISD, pretty progressive district as well. I was left alone. I decided what my students needed to learn, and that's what I taught. I mean, I used the curriculum, obviously. It is, especially for US history, it is tested. They have to learn it. But in my government class, for instance, I have always taught how the government works, the curriculum for about a little over half, maybe 2/3 of the class. And then I make them do projects where they explore their power, the power of the individual in affecting the government that we have on all of the levels, from school board up to presidency. A lot of the projects that I've had my students do in the past are now illegal. Mm-hmm. I am not allowed to do them. They passed a law this last year, saying that students cannot get credit for political activism. I made my students contact their legislators, contact their school board members, contact their city councilmen if they lived in the city, because they need to know what that process is like. They need to know what is the language they need to use to effectively argue their case. And now, if I were teaching government this year, I'm not supposed to do that. Mm-hmm. It is taking power away from my students. I've always taught almost exclusively Black and Brown students, and they need to know their power. They need to know that they have power. They need to know how to wield that power. And it's very frustrating to me that I have been handcuffed in this way from helping them to see that power.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Michelle, that's hard to follow. So I've been working in mostly Title I schools with Black and Brown students as well. I've also been mostly in middle school, but more recently as a diagnostician, I worked in both elementary and middle school. And I am troubled by the trend of trying to police thought in classrooms by trying to stigmatize books that speak about issues that students need to digest, need to process so they can continue their self-discovery. I don't want them to see a text written by someone, an author who is from the LGBTQ plus community, and somehow see that as shameful and then internalize that shame, internalize the shame of being othered if there are Black and Brown authors who are targeted as well. So it is beyond just the slippery slope, much like that student in Granbury ISD who spoke about governments banning books and trying to control that thought, that those parties are never looked at highly in history. And I am frustrated by just a small margin of parents who are trying to assume control by asserting themselves, sometimes violently, sometimes aggressively, with death threats or just physical threats of harm to school board officials, where they're retiring, where superintendents are stepping down because they don't want to face that pressure. And it takes the rest of us, it's our responsibility to make sure that we're countering that animosity and that hatred and that ignorance, frankly, to make sure that sensible heads prevail. We need to allow libraries and classrooms to be those areas of forming your personhood. And that is something that we have to hold dear. Students may not have the full use of, the First Amendment because of limitations of the school building, but we can't just assume that they are empty vessels waiting to be filled. They have thoughts, they have feelings, they have agency. We don't respect that agency, then we're really just expecting them to be robots. And our children aren't robots, and teachers aren't robots either. We need to have that respect for the institution in order for our public school system to continue to thrive. It's suffering right now because of the pandemic, and this is just one more burden that educators and students have to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the solutions to the things that are going on right now?
So
Go ahead, go for it.
okay, yeah. So basically, I would say one thing is making sure that you try to stay in constant, like communication with your school board by reading the emails, reading the agendas, and finding out what is going on. If you're able to attend or view the school board meetings, there are a lot of things that are happening that kind of go under the radar if you're not paying attention. So I have attended school board meetings since last summer because of some things that are happening in my local area of Spring Branch. So I'm kind of more in tune with what's happening than most people. But it's really up to the school board, for one, to make that information accessible to the public because they serve the public. But it's also we have to do our due diligence as well and make sure that we stay in touch with what they're doing and organize, emails, organize speakers when public comments are possible, and have those united fronts. So again, that small group of parents can't assume and must and have a greater portion of control than they really deserve.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that one of the major ways that people can help is to run for office, to run for school board, to run for state board of education, to find candidates running for those things that you support and block walk for them. Put up their sign in your yard, donate to them, phone bank for them, whatever it is. And also for state legislature and Congress, those things affect education as well. We have so many people who ignore those odd year elections. I live in HISD, and my district had pretty decent turnout, and it was still under 10%. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous. And we're getting these people elected to these school boards that get, 7,000 votes. Mm-hmm. And out of it in a district that has 65,000 students, or HISD 265,000 students. Mm-hmm. And it's not good. It's not good. So run for office, go to school board meetings, speak out, write emails to your school board members, write, letters to your school, write a postcard to your school board member, call your school board member. If there is something happening in your area and you feel like they shouldn't be censoring, they shouldn't be pulling those books out of the classroom, they shouldn't be stopping teachers from teaching, certain subjects, whatever it is, then your opinion matters. And you need to, if you don't have the time to go to the meeting, then make yourself heard in another way. I love that Diana is almost every month at that Spring Branch ISD meeting. I've been there one time. I have trouble getting over there on Mondays. But But it is imperative that we have our voices heard, and that we not just, somebody else will take care of it, because they're not.
No, you both bring up a really good point about a small minority of people that are voting, that are showing up to school board meetings, and they are in control of the narrative. They're in control of what's going on, because the vast majority of people who should have their voices heard don't come, and for various reasons. A lot of people are working 2, 3 jobs to survive. I mean, I'm completely empathetic to why so many people are tuned out of what's going on. But if something doesn't start to change soon, we're not gonna see too many positive changes going forward. So it's the challenge as a candidate, as a candidate running for the underdog party in the state of Texas. It's getting people engaged, getting the message right, saying what it is that'll get people engaged and get them interested in voting. So, that's the burden that's on us as candidates here in the state of Texas, is getting people out to vote in their best interest.
Exactly. People need to also research reality. You said people need to vote in their best interest, and a whole lot of people aren't. Teachers voting for the Republican Party, who want to literally destroy public education in the state of Texas so that people will accept vouchers. That is literally the goal of the Republican Party. They will do anything they can to hurt public education so people will stop fighting against the voucher system, which allows your tax money to go to private schools. And people are like, well, I would love that. Yeah, but your little $4,000 or whatever you're going to get from the state of Texas to go towards private school, unless you can already afford to send your kid to a private school, it's not going to help you. All it's doing is taking the people who already can afford to send their kid to Kincaid or Duchenne, their tax dollars out of the system. That's all it's doing.
Okay. Well, thank y'all for sharing your observations about what's going on. I'd just like to take a minute and talk about being a candidate, and how, before, I was telling Diana earlier, before I ran as a candidate, I never worked on a campaign. I never had any insight at all, or even any thoughts about anybody running politically. I didn't know where the money came from. I had no idea. So I think it's important to just take a minute and talk about this to the people that are watching today, because a lot of them may have no idea about what it's like to actually run as a candidate.
Right. Well, from my understanding, all three of us are still continuing to work full time, right? And so being a candidate and running full time, especially in my case, I'm trying to do this with some people on staff, but I don't yet have a campaign manager. And so it just adds the extra job of like arranging things and putting things on my calendar and getting things coordinated. And so it kind of is just an extra full platter at the moment. But I don't think that being part of the working class should preclude you from being a representative for your community and for your constituents. I am dedicated to public service, as are both of you. And I just think that it should be easier for us to be out on the trail and not have, this extreme responsibility. But that's what it's worth. It's worth doing, but it's just a little hard.
It absolutely is. I talked earlier about, I'm in grad school and a full-time teacher and running for office. I've had it a little easier so far this year, just because I don't have a primary opponent this time around. Last time I had a runoff in my primary. And the primary runoff wasn't until July. So I was running solid the entire year of 2020. And I actually started running in February of 2019. So it was 2 full years of running as hard as I can. Once Zoom meetings got up and going, it was 3 meetings a night. And you were talking about fundraising. Women have a much more difficult time fundraising than male candidates do, and women of color a much more difficult time getting funds than white women. It is frustrating. It is time consuming, not as much for me as it is for those of you running for Congress. My race, I need to raise $40,000 for the whole thing, right? Congress, that's what you need to raise pretty much a day. So it is, I don't even know how you do it. I don't even know how you can grasp the concept of raising the kind of money that you're supposed to raise to run for Congress. I am in awe of both of you.
There's an immense amount of money that's required to run, even to be able to mail something out to quite a few thousands of people in each county. And that's just going to Office Depot and printing off a letter I created in my computer. I mean, everything costs money, and I'm not a wealthy person that's able to self-fund my campaign. Mm-hmm. So even $5 from someone or $25 from someone helps out a lot. Even to make phone calls for fundraising or just to introduce myself to the people in the district, that costs $175 a month to have a system where, it'll send a text message, not a text message, but an email, and I'll be able to leave a voicemail in a matter of seconds, where before I was doing it all manually on my cell phone. And that takes a lot of time. So even have access to the Voter Action Network here in Texas, through the Texas Democratic Party, it cost me $3,000, and I'm doing a payment plan right now. I'm paying $300 a month until I pay this off to have access to the phone numbers and the addresses of the voters that live in my district. So it's just money. I don't have campaign staff. I can't afford it. I'm running a lean campaign because that's what I'm available, what I'm able to do right now. So, thankfully a few volunteers have stepped up and they're able to help me out to some extent, but I'm a candidate living in a red district in a red county. And, realistically, I don't want to get down on myself because I haven't raised $1 million when it's all said and done. I mean, my primary objective is to create that infrastructure in these areas that don't have the infrastructure. I don't live in Houston. I don't live in Harris County. I don't live in Dallas or Austin. So there's a really big need to build that infrastructure and connect with Democrats outside of the major cities. So that's the focus of my campaign. And, if I don't raise a whole lot of money, if I can at least get that done partially, I feel like I've done something.
It's definitely a process,
Yeah, it is. And that's a lot of my goal this year, since they redistricted the district to include a big chunk of Montgomery County, is to do exactly that. It's a Donald Trump plus 17 district now. My chances of winning it are pretty slim. But I'm running again because somebody needs to. Somebody needs to run, and it needs to not just be a name on the ballot. It needs to be somebody that's going and registering voters in Montgomery County that have given up and explaining that they can't give up. That by those Democrats that have given up in counties like Montgomery County and Brazoria, that those counties can become the next Fort Bend, the next Tarrant. That also, even if they don't become the next Fort Bend or the next Tarrant, if they can vote a little more blue, then Mike Collier or whoever wins the LG primary could win. Beto or whoever wins the gubernatorial primary can win. The AG Democrat can win. If those counties like Montgomery, if we can do that work in those counties, then that is how we flip this state. Yeah. That is how. That and the strong Democratic districts here in Harris County and Dallas and Austin, they have lower voter turnout than the ones that are more even. The purple districts, they say. And those sitting reps do not do the work to get out the vote because they're safe. They don't even have a primary or a general election opponent half the time. Why should they spend their money? They should spend their money because we're not going to flip the state without them. Between getting the vote up in those districts and bluifying, as I keep saying, Montgomery County and counties like it, that's how we flip this state.
I think maybe an idea would be to pair a populous blue county with maybe a club in a rural county, so just they can like share ideas and talk and kind of like not a mentor situation, but like an affiliation. Because I think what is most challenging when you are trying to make change is that you feel so alone and so solitary, and you don't really see like have the perspective of knowing what can work in different areas. Of course, every community is going to have a different approach and needs a different approach, but sometimes it's just the solidarity and knowing that you're not alone, and that you have people who are, you know, able to do things and say, okay, well, let me see what I can take and grow here in my own space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And as someone who lives in a rural area, I can tell you there's Democrats out here. There are quite a few Biden-Harris signs in the previous election, which was very encouraging. I mean, we were, you know, kind of at risk for having a dictator stay into office. So, I mean, there was really a sense of urgency when it came to the last election, but there were a lot of Biden-Harris signs. And there are a lot of people here who vote Democrat and who would potentially vote Democrat if they could hear our side of it, they could interact with us. And it's a real challenge to get to the people and be able to have a message that resonates with them, why they should come out and vote. We need people to come out and vote in a off election year where we don't have, you know, the risk of a dictator staying in office.
I'm definitely worried that voting could be down because the worry about him is gone. But I kind of hope that people are paying enough attention to what the state legislature did last year on so many levels that will activate them. I mean, you know, women's bodily autonomy being taken away, the attack on trans children, so many different, of course, voting rights, so many different horrible attacks on varying groups. I really hope people are paying attention. I know that, you know, SB 8 did get a lot of attention, the abortion bill, and so did the voting rights, but will they still remember it in November?
Yeah.
I worry.
I feel like teachers are more activated than I've ever seen them before, because those in TEA, which is the Texas Education Agency, are making these decisions about our safety without regard to just scientific knowledge. And I believe TEA is still working remote while we are not given that, we are not afforded that option. So it's just really tone deaf is a mild way of putting it, in how we've been treated as professionals. And a lot of teachers have left the profession. So that's obviously not awesome for the kids. But, you know, I think that teachers are reaching that point to where they're saying, to hell with this. We need to, you know, really pay attention and who's making these policies, because it's literally splitting the profession apart.
Yeah, a study came out yesterday or no, last week or late last week about first-year teachers and the large percentage of them that have quit in their first year. It's a massive jump from previous years. You know, in March and April of 2020, everybody loved teachers, right? And now everybody attacks us. It's disheartening at the very least, to be dealing with that. To see parents who go to school board meetings and scream their faces red against mask mandates, or because a book had a gay character in it, or whatever it is they're screaming about, when those are the same parents that don't even answer teachers' emails, that don't respond to our phone calls. It's frustrating.
Yeah. Well, thank you to both of you for what you do. I mean, it's not easy being a teacher. That's not the profession that I chose. I don't have the patience for it, but what you do is so very important. And thank you for teaching our kids.
Thanks.
I do love teaching. As soon as I get my master's, I will definitely be going back to teaching. It's the reason I'm getting my master's, so I can teach dual credit to my students. Because when I teach dual credit, the state legislature can't necessarily tell me what I can and can't teach.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. I will be qualified to teach dual credit U.S. history and dual credit government. And students in the United States, students in Texas, students in Harris County, students everywhere need a strong basis in U.S. history, because we see what happens when you don't understand the way things really happened. You get Holocaust deniers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the repercussions, they're real. And I think that we're seeing evidence of that in just the cognitive dissonance and people not really understanding the connection between free thought, freedom, what their rights are as parents. There doesn't need to be a parental bill of rights as far as education, because I think you posted this, Michelle. There's already parents' rights listed in the framework. And we really need to be paying attention when divisive people are being appointed or put on the panel to create social studies curriculum for the state of Texas. And so I think you should talk about what people can do, Michelle, in that situation.
There's a guy that was just appointed to the State Board of Education's panel to look at social studies curriculum. And he literally espouses white nationalist conspiracy theories on a regular basis, believes that the 2020 election was a coup, and things like that. This man does not belong anywhere near education. And people need to, as I have been saying on Facebook and Twitter, write their State Board of Education member and express their displeasure that this man is on the panel to look at social studies curriculum. It is horrifying that this man will have anything to do with the curriculum that I teach, that the students of Texas will be learning. It's absolutely horrifying to me.
Beyond sending an email, I wonder if there's a phone number that we could call to contact the State Board of Education, because I think that if they were to hear from people, that may make a more immediate, impact if someone had to take the time to answer the calls.
Well, the problem is that the State Board of Education members don't have their own offices. So, you could call the State Board of Education and talk to the secretary or whoever answers the phone or whatever, but I don't even know if those messages would get to the individual 15 members. I don't know.
I think I'm going to do some checking on that, because that might be worthwhile, so they can hear directly from people, because they are a public entity, so they should be reachable to hear our concerns about a white nationalist being put in that position.
I was watching the meeting because last week the State Board of Education met. They only meet for like 5 weeks a year. There are individual committees that meet other times, but they actually meet 5 times a year. And so they were meeting last week, and they were talking about they had voted in the committee that this man is on, Balch is his name. And they were talking about the instructions they were going to give the committee members that were going to create the new curriculum. And it was just very obvious that some of the members have never taught anything, and some of the ones that do teach have never taught social studies or history, because some of the instructions that they were trying to put in there made no sense to me as a teacher. Language that they wanted in the standards themselves, it just made no sense. It was gobbledygook, for want of a better word. I had to turn it off when I had a meeting, but it was very frustrating.
I bet.
Yeah, Michelle brings up a good point. There should be teachers, actual people that have had experience teaching in a classroom, making these decisions. I just feel like so much of our political system just in the US and in Texas is out of balance, because you have people that have been elected to represent different groups of people that have not lived like these people, that have not had daily experiences like these people. They're unable to empathize. They haven't had the practical experience of doing a lot of, for the decisions that they're making that are affecting the daily lives of people. We need more teachers. We need more regular, average, everyday people to be elected to represent the masses of people that they've never walked in their shoes. So how can you make a decision in Washington or at the state level that affects so many people, and you've never experienced it for yourself? But then again, being someone that's not an elite, someone that's not wealthy, that can't self-fund their campaign, how do you get from, concerned citizen activist to elected official? And I think that that's something that hopefully going forward, we see more and more people, regular people, that are running because they believe that things can be better and want to be a part of that change. But it's a difficult transition. It's a difficult journey to take.
It absolutely is. I don't have to raise that much, but even raising, because nobody has ever heard of State Board of Education, they're not looking to give money to their State Board of Education member. And now that they redistricted in such a way that it took away, of course, the areas I did very well in and the areas that I got my money from. The southern border of my district is now Westheimer. I live on Westheimer on the northern side. So I barely live in my district. But I was on the board of the Southwest Democrats, which their area that they work ends at Westheimer. So all of the area that they worked for me so hard and won decisively for me. West U, that did very well for me because of some volunteers. Most of Montrose has been cut out of the district. Most of the Heights has been cut out of the district because those areas had volunteers that were really kicking butt for me. And so, it's frustrating, but you do what you have to do. You continue and you fight on, and you take the fight where it needs to go, because that's what the students of Texas need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What stinks, the redistricting affected a lot of districts in this way. It's frustrating, I know, but I feel like it's also an opportunity for us to build the infrastructure in the areas that we hadn't gone in for one reason or another. So, it's kind of like the ball's in our court. There's a lot of things that are working in our favor as Democrats moving into this election, but are we going to step up to the plate? Are we going to deliver and do what needs to be done? Because there's more being asked of us this time than there was last time, than there was the time before that, because we didn't have the redistricting aspect of what was going on. There's always a challenge, and we're always, in a position where we have to work harder and harder each election. We can sit around and point out all the things that are wrong, that things that should be better, but what are we going to do to make it better? So, I mean, it's, I'm discouraged
Absolutely.
like everyone else, but at the same time, I see this as an opportunity to really show the Republicans here in Texas who we are and what we're capable of. And they're expecting us just to go, it's too hard. We're not going to go to those neighborhoods. We're going to lose anyway. That's what they're expecting us to do. Their numbers are down. Their voting base has shrunk. So they're not in a very good position either. And if we step up to the plate and we get people out to vote, we win. So,
Absolutely.
Ball's in our court.
Absolutely.
So I would just add that, this work is not easy. Emotionally, it's not easy. So I would strongly suggest that you find a buddy or someone that can go and do things with you. And if you just only did phone banking or texting, push yourself a little bit more to go and do a block walk, or to do something more for a candidate of your choice, or see if you can recruit someone to go with you. All of those little things add up into a bigger impact on, the moving the needle in Texas. And so, we need to make sure that we don't give up, that we sustain the fight. And I know that people are tired, and I get that. So absolutely take rest when you need rest. But we also have to make sure that we pick it up a notch, because this is our home, and I'm not willing to give up on where, our community, because some people want to ban abortion access or make it harder for us to vote, or any of those things that give Texas a bad name. I want us to fight for better for all of us, and that takes all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not moving
Absolutely.
from Texas. I'm here. I'm here to stay, and I'm going to fight for the state that I live in. And I want to be proud to say I'm from Texas. So it's just going to take some work, and it is going to take all of us.
I almost moved to Oregon a few years ago because I was so tired of this fight. But that's when I decided to run for office instead. And I was like, I refuse. I've lived in the state my entire life. I was born and raised here. I went to school here. This is my state. I won't let you take it from me. This is not who we are.
Mm-hmm.
We are not a state of hate. Literally, the word Texas comes from the word friendship. And we need to always remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And not let them think they've won, much less let them win. The long run is ours.
Yeah.
I just hope we can shorten how long that is.
Yeah. We just got to bring it.
Yeah. I feel like, it's up to us how long this takes. It's the pendulum is going to swing the other way. Do we want it to take 25 years, or are we going to shorten it to 5 years, 7 years, 10 years? I mean, it's up to us, and it's going to require quite a bit of work and coordination and communication. So I'm encouraged going into this election in 2022. If you listen to the news media, it's like, oh, doom and gloom, and we can't buy into that. We really can't. We've got to continue to fight. Well, I'm glad to be in this fight with the two of you. If people want to reach out to you to volunteer or donate, or even find out more about you or your campaign, where can they go?
For my campaign, you can go to dianafortexas.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, Diana for Texas. And Michelle and I have been doing some block walks together. And we'll continue to do that for spaces where we overlap, because we know that people do respect educators. They believe in us as public servants. So we want to continue that work in our respective offices.
Absolutely. And they can email me at Michelle, the number 4, SBOE, the number 6 at gmail.com. My website is palmerfortexased.com. Also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and so forth. We've really, there are amazing candidates running both here in Harris County and in Montgomery County that I have met and I am impressed with. And I hope that people who are tired are taking off the primary season and just going to let things settle. And then they're going to be out there strong, just like they were fighting against Trump. They're going to be fighting for Texas. So that's my hope.
Yes, yes. And thank you to all those hardworking Democrats out there, activists in any way, shape, and form that you're volunteering your time, even if it's just talking to a neighbor or a family member.
Chairs.
Yes, precinct chairs, county chairs. It's a difficult job. So thank you for all the work that you've done and that you'll continue to do. We appreciate you as candidates.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I'll have a great rest of the evening. And again, I appreciate your time and thank you for all you're doing as candidates and as educators.
Thank you, Laura.
Diana Martinez Alexander and Michelle Palmer are candidates that we need to elect in 2022. Diana has several primary opponents, and early voting for the primary election begins on Monday, February the 14th, and runs through Friday, February the 25th. Primary election day is March the 1st. Your vote counts, and your vote is your voice. Please vote in this primary election, and again in November, where Michelle and I will be on the ballot, as we are not in contested races for the primary election. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll see you next time.